What is up, everybody? Welcome to Bettor Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Aguiar, and I'm excited to be joined by my man, Nick Bretwish, as the two of us will be taking you through the board for the 106th rendition of the PGA Championship. As always, we hope you will consider signing up for Underdog Fantasy, the proud sponsors of this show. You can use the sign-up code BGP to claim your special pick, plus first-time deposit offer of up to $250 in bonus cash. Underdog has a plethora of options for you to choose from this week for the PGA Championship. They're also crushing it with NBA playoffs and everything else that they have going on, so be sure to check them out. Nick, what is up, man?
I don't know. I'm excited, but also not very excited. I think it's going to be a great week to play DFS. I don't have any action yet. I'm waiting for my data to pull and push the odds away I want it to. It has like Rory like plus 250 for some reason. Like it's not pulling Scotty into the field, so I'm having issues with that. So that'll be fixed. But what do you got on the card so far? And then we'll go like rapid fire on like what you think Savage Golf Podcast is live. Guess we kind of got after it last week, but any thoughts on Rory before we get into like your betting card? Like he just absolutely went nuts on Sunday.
To me, this is classic Rory. I talked about this the week before the Masters, that this is what Rory does every single time. He finds himself in these positions where he wins tournaments before the week of the major and gets everybody all hyped coming into the event and seems to disappoint. I will say Valhalla is probably one of the best major championship setups I could think of for him. It's probably a realistic point to say that a PGA Championship would also be the best courses in general for him to find success. So he's coming in with form. It's going to show up in the ownership. You're going to get this, and we'll talk about it when we get into the $10,000 and up section, but like between him, Scotty, Brooks, that's essentially every single notable win. You have a couple other ones in there like Pendrith, but like every notable win that we can talk about from the PGA Tour and Live over the last month. And I think they should be the three favorites. I think you're going to get this spot where you're going to get a lot of ownership with all three. You're going to have to pick and choose and weave in and out of some of these decisions. And I do know off air, one of your stances that you have, which we can talk about in a second, but I'll very quickly run through my betting card.
I want to give one fun fact.
Okay.
Last time this PGA Championship was held at Valhalla 2024. Rory McIlroy was your champion coming off of back-to-back wins. The Open Championship, so he won two majors that year because I think he was T8th at the Masters. This is back when the PGA was in August. I feel like it's cooler in August. Like I hate that the season, like, what is it, 2 or 3 weeks in between majors pretty much throughout the whole summer this year. That kind of sucks. I feel like it's over too soon. But Open Championship winner, WGC Bridgestone Invitational winner goes to PGA, wins. So he won 2 in a row. If you count, do you count New Orleans as a win?
Yeah. I mean, I profited off of it, so I'm going to count it.
Okay, that's fair. And then goes to PGA and wins at the same course. And statistically speaking, they didn't have a ton of data from, I mean, there's some, but he looks like the same golfer except he hit more fairways and he's a little bit longer nowadays.
Here's the problem, Nick. I understand we're talking about.
I'm pumped up for him. Yeah, I know you said it. He's going to show form. People are going to be. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
This 2014 victory, and at least you're going back to the course that we can have this conversation about. That's his last major championship that he has put on his record.
Good God, you're right.
It's an astonishing situation that Rory has found himself in, where he's gone, about 10 years now without adding one. And I think it shows to where when you have your opportunities to win, you really have to pull them out, because these streaks or these inactive abilities to put together these wins can come at any point. And it's kind of what Brooks was able to do at his best. Like what is Brooks at now? 6 majors?
Yes. No, 5.
5 majors?
PGA Championship, I think, was his 5th, right? That was his last one.
I think, yeah, I guess 3 PGAs, 2 Opens. Is that
confirmed? Yeah. 2017 U.S. Open, 2018 U.S. Open, 2018 PGA, 2019 PGA, and then last year's PGA.
Yeah,
5.
I mean, you have to go on these runs when you can, and maybe this is where Rory can pick things back up. But I don't know. I think unfortunately, from a betting perspective, we have an inability to jump in at Rory at these prices. Like, there was an intrigue for me at the Masters, and maybe the Masters was the wrong tournament. When we talked, one of the very first shows we did this year, I told you 2024 is going to be the year of Rory. And it's been
I said the year of JT, so at least you didn't take that stance. Even though he's coming around. He's coming around.
I mean, this is going to be the best course I think we've gotten from him in a while. This is the first time that my model actually somewhat liked him. It had him inside the top 20 of my model, so take that for whatever it's worth. But Rory's been in this spot at the beginning parts of the year where there was always a bad round that was being put together, and I'm curious to see what will happen at a course like Valhalla. I think that for this major championship, it's going to probably play easier than most PGA championships will. And that is a good answer for Rory. Wet conditions, from what I have heard, that is a good answer for Rory. Back-to-back victories. Everything is stacking up for Rory to find success. It's just, I until he wins a major championship again, I don't think I can be the one sitting there with the ticket.
Okay, it's fair. And sub 10 to 1, like, it just takes up so much room on your card unless you're just firing like crazy, which by all means it's a major. I won't talk you out of doing anything crazy, but yeah, it's tough. From a DFS perspective, which is the majority of the show anyway, I think there's much more of a conversation to be had. But before we go any further, John Rahm 20 to 1, BetMGM. Do I just do it?
I did it. I mean, there was a bunch of 20 to 1s out there. I don't know if numbers have moved, if that's the last 20 to 1 available. But when I placed the ticket this morning, there were 4 or 5 different locations in the space where you could find that price.
Bet Online dropped to 18. Bovada's got 20 as well. If you guys are offshore in a state that doesn't allow you to do other stuff. Yeah, MGM 20. Like, John Rahm's one of the highest guys. Again, my numbers are pulling with no Scotty, so I don't get why that's happening. But John Rahm's up there. So yeah, go ahead. What's the matchups? I love that you have multiple already. And Monday, we're probably in good form to not have those numbers leave the train station so quickly, correct?
I don't know where we're at.
I'll press check. You go live. Let's do it.
I assume they usually move fast, but we'll see where we're at. So the 2 that I have in would be Shane Lowry minus 129 over Tom Kim. That's about as much juice as I will lay on most of these matchups. The other one
you can get that Bet Online and Unibet, which I believe is also using Kambi. So like your Bet Rivers should match that. Shane Lowry over Tom Kim. Got it. Still there. That's good.
The other one would be Lucas Glover minus 120 over Adam Hadwin. That was, you can tell me if it's anywhere else. I've seen it specifically at Bet Online is where I got it at.
Confirmed. Still there.
So those would be the 2 that I have in right now. The 2 that I am considering, and these are the 2 that I would like to run by you. And I don't know if I'm going to get to the window on either one of these 2, but Taylor Pendrith minus 120 over Billy Horschel.
Yeah, dude, I'll always take on Billy.
And the other one that I would be, my model.
You were on Billy last week, weren't you?
Yeah.
Let me look at the shot link. He wasn't. I mean, his iron game was atrocious. I think he did better on Sunday, though, didn't he? Come back a little bit.
Yeah. The thing that worries me, I guess, about Horschel is my model.
Sunday he sucked too. Yeah, he wasn't good.
My model seems to have this overall safety for Horschel. I'm kind of afraid that he makes the weekend, comes in 57th place, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to get out of Pendrith. It's high upside numbers, lower floor into the mix. We've gotten really good results over the last handful from him. Could make an argument that's overinflated the price a bit, but as I always say, I run my numbers from such a long-term duration. So for Pendrith to be a golfer last week that my model did not necessarily love at the course setup, and now all of a sudden you get him here where he can use his length and he jumps into a top 30 commodity pretty much across the board for me. Thought that was an interesting play. And then the other one that my model actually had the biggest value of all the ones we've talked about, but I seem to have the most trepidation to actually place a wager on, just because I've talked about this guy a lot recently. I think both of us think that he's a good golfer. Tom Hoagie minus 110 over Taylor Moore.
I like both of them.
That's enough for me to stay off of it to begin with, because I really like Hoagie this week. I think my numbers might be bad on Taylor Moore just because, like, that's the reverse of the answer of we're running it too long is hurting me there. I don't necessarily want to get caught into this mix of a golfer like Moore, fading him, a golfer that I like. But if you want to talk
Pendrith
about
Pendrith over Horschel, I think that should be closer to minus 135, minus 140. Just looking at it blindly without my numbers actually spitting out a price. But dude, he is a ball striking machine the past month. Obviously, he got the win, but dude, top 30 every single round last week, and he's got a really good short game. You know he's gonna make putts.
Yeah, when you compare those two together and like there's 6 main categories that I ran this week. Weighted strokes gained total, we can talk about what that means in a second, but Pendrith inside the top 30, Horschel outside of the top 85. When you look at strokes gained total on long courses and hard scoring, neither one of them necessarily delivers. 78th for Pendrith, 120th for Horschel. I ran this major championship filter in my model, so that's going to favor Billy Horschel over Pendrith there. I just don't have enough opportunities from Pendrith. That's going to make him look good there. Weighted scoring, 28th for Pendrith, 96th for Horschel. I looked at this. It's a mixture essentially of fairway bunker play and rough play. It's trying to find weighted approach numbers there. I think you kind of come into this very interesting situation with this course where in the one end, if you find the rough, you're going to have to be able to play out of it. Second thing is with this Zoysia grass, you're going to get a lot extra rollout here. From what I'm reading, every single thing that I see, it seems like a lot of balls are going to end up rolling out into these bunkers. I wanted players that could have good proximity numbers from there. You think of Pendrith, big, strong kid or guy at this point. I guess he's older than I always think he is for as long as he's been around. But inside the top 50 for me, Horschel ended up putting together a fine grade there. And then really the main difference that just completely shifted my model in one direction, weighted ball striking. That's kind of what you're talking about, Nick, with Pendrith's ball striking that he's put together. Inside the top 30 for me with Pendrith, Horschel, 112th in this field.
For that, I'm out. Pendrith in. And Pendrith is a good bunker player, isn't he?
So inside of my model, from an overall sand save percentage, bad. From an overall fairway bunker, good. And that's more of what I'm looking for to begin with. So that's kind of, he's hitting all the marks that I would like to see for this week. I always, when I fade Horschel, it goes either really good or really bad. It's always a situation where Horschel's either in the top 10 or Horschel just egregiously misses the cut and it's an easy win. I had that at the Zurich a couple weeks ago when I took Hostler and his partner, I think it was Sam Ryder, over Tyson Alexander and Horschel. I do think that the market might still be a little bit overcorrected from that victory that Horschel had a handful of weeks ago. So I don't know, Nick. That would probably be the third if there is a third right now. I'm still waiting for DraftKings and FanDuel to drop their prices, but that is where I'm at inside of the head-to-head market. The two locked in, probably Pendrith over Horschel being the third there. And then for the outright bets, I took Dustin Johnson at 90-1.
Yeah, that's just long gone, isn't it?
Yeah, that was something that sat there for a second. And
I don't know. Bet365, I think, still has it.
Do they? That number has drifted up there because I don't believe
100-1 on Bet Online. Have you checked?
The numbers
usually
moving.
You check there, right? Dude,
that's where I
90-1 Bet Online. Sorry, I just refreshed.
Yeah, that's where I placed it, was there. So the number hasn't moved. It's still out there.
FanDuel. So for the legal book users, I don't think he wins. I think he's more of a placement bet and like DFS leverage. I'm just starting to get the vibe that he may not care as much anymore. And the Open Championship of 2022 is like slowly after his live stuff. So it's like that's when I still had a lot of love for him. He was playing really good golf in 2022 anyway, leading up to that transition. But
you know what's interesting, Nick, though, inside of my model, Dustin has been outside of that St. Andrews appearance at the Open where we were both on him. Every other time that he has teed it up in a major, I don't want to speak for you on this, but I know for myself, he has been one of the biggest fade candidates that I've had on my sheet every single week. And this is the first time since St. Andrews we've actually had the potential where the upside numbers in my model absolutely love him. So I agree. I don't think he necessarily wins. 90-1 is a wild price. Like I'll find out if he can win at that price. I took Victor Hovland at 50-1. I texted you last night. I texted you last night. There's no world that I am betting Victor Hovland anytime soon, and numbers drifted on Hovland early this morning, and you're going to get a lot of that. Like, you just need to be patient in this space. You're going to have books competing for prices, and numbers are going to be on the move up and down everywhere. If you don't get it at one spot, you might get it somewhere else. So I grabbed them at 50, and then the other two would be the top of the board wagers for me. I took Jon Rahm at 20-1. I do think that there is this live bias on both ends of the spectrum where, and I have one of them, but guys like Bryson and Koepka are getting a lot of respect in the market, and guys like Dustin Johnson and Rahm and a handful of those other names seem to be drifting up the board. So, I mean, this is a golfer in Jon Rahm that if you took his aggregated totals over like a 3-year running time frame inside of these majors, he was probably 12, 13, 14-1 on average there.
Yes, absolutely.
Now we get a 20-1 golfer after one failed appearance at the Masters. So that was very intriguing to me. I ended up also taking, and I never do this, I took Brooks Koepka at 17-1.
Brooks, I feel like, has too much steam for my liking. But yes, Mark, great point. So is grass in Singapore. He kicked ass too, didn't he? Didn't he win by 2 or 3?
I don't know how many he won by. I know he won, which is the important part of that.
I am taking the Jon Rahm 20-1 ticket. That was like the only ticket I did punch, and that was just off of like number grabbing, which moves me to my next question. Everybody's talking about driver distance, a little bit about accuracy, depending on who you ask. What is your total driving pushing a little bit more this week? Distance, which I think, yes, especially if it's going to be soft. I mean, it's 7,600 yards, and then could play longer based on, obviously could play shorter based on where some tees are, because I know they're going to make, I don't forget what hole it is, 13 or 14 maybe is a drivable par 4, depending on where the tee box is. It looks like there's not going to be much wind at all. Rain tomorrow, and I think other than that, potentially rain Thursday, but nothing like crazy. I think it should be a really good week. But Jon Rahm, outside the Masters, again, it's live, less guys, but even the Euro Cup or Euro stuff that he was playing in the fall, he is top 10 to every single event besides the Masters. In the Masters, he couldn't make a putt. And I want to say, let's check his strokes gained through like day by day. Because I was super heavy on him at Augusta. Like I made the choice on going him. And obviously that one Scotty lineup was awesome, but didn't play any Scotty other than that because I dug my face in Jon Rahm and ate it. I mean, he sucked off the tee on Monday or on Thursday, which I think at Augusta is pretty alarming. Maybe, I don't know what his deal was that day, but not good. Came back, sucked putting. He sucked putting all week. Shot 4 over on Friday, but that was 25 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts up to fucking 100. Like, I don't think he was having fun out there. I don't think anybody was having fun besides Scotty. Lights out ball striking, third in the field on Saturday, and kind of mediocre and couldn't make a putt on Sunday. So I don't know. I feel like, obviously Friday, I don't even think 4 over was that bad compared to the field, but he could not make a putt. So I feel like he played pretty damn well in really tough conditions. Obviously just didn't make a putt. So I'm 20-1 on Jon Rahm for a guy that when no one's going to talk about him because Brooks just won last live event. That's where all the live action is going to go.
And Bryson's going to get a lot of support too.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. Like, dude, they still 9,600, probably not expensive enough, and he's just playing really good golf, and he's very vocal about his game, saying it is in it. I mean, same thing going into Augusta. Like, I didn't realize he had like his own YouTube channel, and I don't really like the guy. I don't think he's like, I don't like watching his videos. I think he's just such a goober, and I've been saying it on this show for years. I believe he's a virgin, which is fine. If that's his choice, by all means, great. But like that, those are just the weird vibes he gives me. And again, all due respect to him if he's waiting, but like it just, it weirds me out. And then like, that's where I had to find, like, golf media was so, no one had the beat on his irons. If they did, they didn't release it. So I don't know if you're a reporter, if you're not reporting like the biggest news, who knows? I don't think I would have thought much about it either. But when he talks about his game being in great shape and saying these irons helped him a lot, I think that means a lot. Like, he's a guy that has never really lied to the media regarding his own game. When he was hurt, he mentioned that a lot. And so I don't know. I like Bryson, his game, especially for this venue, but Jon Rahm is going to be I'm going to plant my flag there again. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But do you want to push this into DFS, or you got any other betting stuff?
No, let's move this into a DFS discussion, because I think this top of the board conversation is what's going to be very interesting this week.
Yeah, I have Jon Rahm at 8%, Rory right around 20, Scotty right around 25. I'm going to fade Scotty again. 13.2, hasn't played golf in a couple weeks. New father, probably, I don't know. I'm just going to talk myself into a narrative. You guys can always play Scotty. I will never tell anybody not to do it. I'm not going to do it, mainly because I couldn't find really anyone in the 5K range I like. I would love to play the old German hammer, Martin Keimer, but now Steven Jaeger is the German hammer, so Keimer's out. I don't mind Toasty, but we'll get into that range anyway. But it's like, it was really hard for me to talk. Obviously, Keita Nakajima. I look into these younger guys often. I think I've been talking about Taiga for 2 years, and he finally showed out a little bit at the Masters, right? Was he really good at Augusta?
I do not recall.
Let me see. No, he didn't. When did he play last? He was good recently. What was it? Oh, the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson. Okay, he top 10 that. Other than that, not much. But I don't know. It's just, we need a hammer kid bet. I haven't found one. Dude, Ed, they have destroyed the top 40 market. It doesn't exist anymore. It's like anything now. Even if I bet a top 40, I'm still losing like 20 points of value on it that I used to have years ago. And that has killed me. Like, my betting season has not been that good, because I kind of used to make a weekly living off of a top 40 or two. And those were like my break even for the card. And then if you hit an outright and had one or two of those, is great. But yeah, it's been tough. But yeah, so I feel like I'm going to play a ton of Jon Rahm. And I don't think I could fade Rory. I think if he's vibing, he's vibing. He's only 600 more than Jon Rahm, who I like a ton, but 1,200 less than Scotty. I think they kind of made a mistake. He should be like 12.5. So I do think Rory's too cheap.
I agree with that. I mean, and as far as the placement markets are concerned, I guess I am also negative in some of those random made miscut sort of bets with it, but the placement market is the only sector right now that I'm negative in. Minus 2.35 units, negative
well
23. Well, the difference is, Nick, is you have more plays in that market than I do. A lot of my exposure comes in the matchups, which is what has saved me this year for the most part. Also, I've found success in the outright market, but 23.36% in the negative ROI there on those. So I don't know what your ROI percentage is, but I mean, that's negative 23% is not good.
It's tough. Yeah, mine's worse.
Not good at all.
This year, at least, but overall it's been really good. But this year it's just been a whole new life of how they're pricing this out, and the hold percentages are through the roof. Or they just want, and obviously golf going to more elevated events and no cut stuff like that's going to hurt my exposure a little bit there too, because then I'm chasing guys like Kirk Hideyama, top 20, but it was plus 225 last week and just didn't really do anything. He was in position on Sunday morning, just didn't really score, and that course played really tough, so it was fun to watch.
I took Matthew Pavon. That was my one placement wager, 18 over or whatever it ended up being.
Yeah, dude. And then Thiegs over Morikawa, he just shit the bed on Saturday. What did he shoot? He shot 80, 81. Oh, yikes. Good times. All right. Any thoughts on Scotty? I mean, I don't think this show we need to talk about Scotty Scheffler. People either get it or they don't. Like, you want to play him and you ride him. I will never talk you off of it, but 13.2. New father, I'm going to tell myself he's tired.
I probably would rather play Rory and Brooks. So I guess that means that I'm going to be out on the ownership of Scotty also based off of that. It's just a game theory answer. You can probably play one of those names in reality. I do think they're going to the majority of them trend upwards in ownership. I'm worried that Koepka's ownership is just going to get out of control at some point because he is the cheapest one of the group. And all I've seen are outright cards that include Brooks Koepka on there.
Is he worth it?
Here's the thing, Nick. I never play Koepka. I get burnt every single major championship by him. I fade him 100% of the time, and I watch him top 10 practically every single tournament and win the other half that he ends up putting himself in contention in. This is the first time in a really long time that my model really liked him. A lot of this came down to I ran this a little bit differently for this go around. Like, obviously, I wanted to look at past PGA championships. I think that's a very interesting thing when you don't have the same course that's being played every single year here, like we do the Masters. Right. There are certain criterias within a game that are going to be pronounced just when you look at the yardage on the scorecard. You're going to have some semblance of distance. You're also going to have some ability to hit your long irons. When I added those two things together, and then I threw into the mix historically how somebody has hit their putter in a major championship, which I have never run that as part of my putting metric that I've thrown into a sheet before. Koepka broke my model in quite a few ways. Like, he has
lost strokes putting just 4 times in majors.
He was decisively number 1 in strokes gained total PGA championships. That's what happens when you win 3 out of the last 5. That's going to be the answer there. But for me, what I really like to see is he was also number 1 in weighted strokes gained total. That's the course specific outlook for Valhalla. That's not taking anything that we have talked about or we've seen in the past from him. That's only taking from what I could provide data wise and what I had in my database worth of numbers that I could pull from him. And it thought he was the best player here. So PGA championships in my mind are clearly where he is best suited to find this high-end success. I can't find myself in a position where I fade him and continue to just bleed money at this tournament for that reason. So I think he's worth it. I think he's too cheap. I think you could make an argument between Rory, Scotty, and Brooks of what this pricing should actually be. I guess for me, though, I have a hard time saying that Brooks should be, if we're directly comparing him to Oberg, we're directly comparing him to Morikawa, like, I would rather move up in price to get to him, and then I would rather take him than Xander. And I'm the biggest Xander supporter that there probably is in the entire world. At least when it comes to what my model thinks. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I have nothing wrong. What do you not like about Xander?
It's not that I don't
closing ability, like killer instinct, like something that you can't see on paper, or is there actually metrics that you don't love when you're pulling for Xander here?
No, I think for the most part, everybody in this top end range is going to look really good.
Awesome.
You have what? You have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
He grades out as the best long iron player for me expected this week.
Yeah, there's a lot that there's going to be to like about him. I guess the only negative thing that I could point towards is he has not historically been good out of the thicker rough.
Okay.
So if the off the tee game falters a little bit, at some point there is scar tissue that comes into play with the inability to close. Like, he is not a robot. You could put yourself in the contention so many times, and if you don't get over the finish line, like, I think he's very expensive for what we're getting here. I don't dislike him, though. He's the 4th player in my model. It's like, it's a very small difference between a lot of these names. But when I was actually trying to find elite qualities that I could extrapolate out a little bit within my sheet, those elite qualities came from Scotty. They came from Rory. They came from Jon Rahm. And I think that's what makes Jon Rahm this week one of the better leverage plays to begin with. I don't have ownership up in front of me. I'm going to run this on Tuesday. I don't know if you said what you have on Rahm right now.
7, but anything that I say, like, again, this is so subject to change. I just don't think Jon Rahm's going to get steamed at all because, obviously people are going to ride a little bit of reason for him with Xander, and it's been a hell of a season for him. Brooks being cheaper. I think most people put Jon Rahm and Brooks at the same price. They're still going to choose Brooks. And Rory only being 12K, like, ownership's not going to go to Jon Rahm. So I'm pretty confident in that. And then with Ed's question here, which is a great question, I think it's more of a personal thing and a game theory question. Like, play Brooks and Rory and bet Rahm. I feel like if you're playing DFS, maybe fade one of the Brooks or the Rorys if you can stomach that. And if you're playing MME, like, it depends on contest size, but I think you have a much more expected value playing Jon Rahm in DFS. And if he does go crazy, then 5 to 8% of the field having him, and you being like 20 to 30% John Rahm, I think you're probably going to make more money that way than betting him 20-1, right?
Yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask about proper exposure in these spots too, because
That's how I look at it. But I also, like, again, sorry to cut you off. I do it all the time. So for those listening, that's kind of like whatever idea. I have to ask Spencer right away. Otherwise, I'm going to forget and I'm going to be mad later. But like, that's how I look at it. But I also have weeks where I completely get my ass kicked. But then weeks it goes right, like then it goes really right. But to me, like even though I am on John Rahm 20-1 already, I feel like if I'm going to max out the Millie Maker this week, then John Rahm top threeing that event at 5 to 8% would be much more advantageous for me to just go heavy on that side of things. But that's how I look at it. I don't know if that's a good answer. Does that make sense to the common listener? Hopefully.
No, I
ask all the questions you want to, guys. By the way, like, we love the interaction. Sorry, I'm muting Spencer.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, Nick. With it, it's just I guess for me when it comes to exposure, I don't necessarily mix and match. Like we could talk about this from a fantasy, like when I used to play in a bunch of fantasy football leagues and I had a bunch of dynasty leagues, like they always, like split your portfolio and don't have all your eggs in one basket. I am all in every single spot of where I find an advantage. Like I'm not trying to spread things out. I do agree with what Nick said. When you look specifically at Brooks and Rory, there's going to be a lot of ownership around those two. I think you're fine playing them and also having Rahm in the player pool. Like if you're making enough lineups, I have no issues with those three. Those are probably the three names that I want my exposure to at the end of the day. I can get out on Scotty. I can get out on Xander. I probably want nothing to do with Oberg with all these reports of him walking around with injuries at this point. Like that feels like something waiting to backfire very quickly there.
Is it bad? Do we know? Is the name considered bad?
Here's what I've heard, and I don't want to take things that I read on the internet and take it at face value, but according to people that were watching him today, he was grabbing at his knee every other second and was having problems moving.
Oh, all right. I don't like that because this is also a perfect course for him.
It would be. This would be a very nice spot. If I had any belief that he wasn't actually injured, this is a nice spot to get contrarian with him. I'm just afraid that this is going to end prematurely when he pulls out of the golf tournament.
Right on. All right. Collin Morikawa. What are your thoughts?
Here's the thing about Morikawa, and it's kind of the answer I always give about Koepka. Like, those are not two guys that I ever want to play, but I do think Morikawa is going to take too big of a hit in the public perception of his lack of distance that he brings to the table, and the more distance that you add to a model, the worse it's going to get. He's fine in my sheet. There's probably going to be, and you can tell me what you see on the ownership right now.
Aggregate, doing the mental math, 12, 13.
So that's about what I would have anticipated, give or take within a couple percent, like potentially even a little bit lower than that. But I'm fine for anybody who wants to consider him. Like he's probably okay, but I would still rather find a way to construct a little bit differently and just get massively overweight to John Rahm.
Yeah. His numbers for me anticipated from the rough don't look very good. Long irons, with him, they're okay. I guess not as in as good form historically. If you pull like long-term data on more recent term, but also had to make it differently for certain players based on live and all that stuff. So that's where I don't love the output there, but I feel like I'd rather have Cantlay. But I don't know. I feel like you and I are just believers in this guy that one day it's just gonna click again. I wonder if does he care? I just have such a hard time reading that guy. Because 10K sub 10%, like he like John Rahm is going to go underround. I think because everybody in this area is going to flock towards. I don't think Max Homa, but I think Bryson DeChambeau and Wyndham Clark because of driver distance is what everybody's going to think. And I have no problem with that. But I feel like I can't lay. I don't think I'm into Cam Smith. Are you into Cam Smith at all?
I do not like Cam Smith this week. Like he's probably for me one of the bigger fades on the board.
Too expensive for what we've seen. Sure, everything looks great at Augusta, but we know Augusta is one of the most predictable courses out there. That guy knows how to score there. He's done it pretty much the last
It's
3 or
also
4 years.
wide open. It's wide open.
Wide open,
I
yeah.
don't like Cameron Smith at these long courses that I saw Zach mention this in the chat of they're having like 3 different tiers of the rough, and the players that get really wayward with it will end up being the ones that get hurt the most. That feels like a Cam Smith problem where you have a lack of distance and a lack of accuracy and the potential to go wayward off the tee and already be further back and now in some of the thicker stuff. Like that feels like forced layups out the ass for the most part for him where he's going to struggle. So he was, of any player, $9,000 and above. I guess my model does not like Zalatoris. That's another thing that my model continues to not like every single week. But
dude, I think we're on the right side of that fade. I thought his ownership would be a lot higher. Obviously, shit in the bed at Quail Hollow doesn't help. But dude, like when everybody talks about, okay, this is a course you can kind of, you got to hit it long, hit the long. Like Will Zalatoris has not been long off the tee since
not at all
the back injury. So those pulling longer term data, like you need to look into that. I've been saying that for a couple of weeks, or maybe even a couple of months, and it really hasn't hurt me. At Augusta, sure, I guess it did, but I don't know. Can you say predictability? He's only played it twice and he tore it up twice, but maybe. But his distance is nowhere what it used to be. Just pulling the numbers from last year's driving distance to this year, and ball speed's down a little bit too. But he has gotten more accurate, so he's, it's not like he's losing who he was as a player because now he's hitting more fairways. The iron game's still fantastic. So
yeah, what he has going for me. So like you asked this question earlier, and I don't even know if I gave a real answer to it when I looked at total weighted driving in my model this week. It is more distance for all the reasons that we've talked about. One of the things that I did add a pretty good emphasis on, though, was off the tee on every single course that I could find that had both long. So that would be 7,400 yards plus. That was just a very simple thing that I pulled from Fantasy National for that exact metric there. And then I also found everything that had thick rough of this 4-inch plus that I could find. And that's where Zalatoris really took a jump in my model. He was second overall there. So it's not as if the profile doesn't have the ability to spike. And PGA Championships for him, at least in his prime pre-injury, pre-surgery, were a really good spot for him because of that distance. Even with me running my data for 2 years, the distance doesn't look good in my sheet either. Like, he's outside of the top 70 of this field with some of these numbers that I'm running. Like, that's not good.
Does he tear up the Memorial, or where I'm wondering? Obviously, PGA Championships, he's been pretty good.
I think the one thing about this course that's at least
Farmers too. Would Farmers check that box? Obviously, the distance would. Is the rough considered thick? I feel like every time they go to.
I'd have to go through and see which ones were the courses that pulled it. I don't have it on the top of on hand right now. I would assume
Torrey Pines checks that box. I feel like every week they go there, there's always that Twitter video of dropping the ball. Everybody knows the video I'm talking about. Also, contrarian bettors would win over cashes. Pods are still alive.
Last thing about Zalatoris before we move on.
Yes.
If we want to use the Memorial as a tournament, and I don't have his Memorial history up in front of me. I don't know if you have that now.
I can. Yeah. 23 he wouldn't play, obviously. So 22, T5. 21 looks like he did not play. Would that make sense? Why would he not play?
I don't know off the top of my head. Even if we use that 5th place finish there, though.
That'd be it. That'd be his only go.
Okay, so Jack Nicklaus designs in general have a very similar quality to where there's a lot of strategic nature that comes into play. Valhalla is the long version of where there's a bunch of distance that's going to matter here, but it goes back to the point that I keep trying to talk about. It's if you're only looking at this for distance, you're running the model the wrong way. And that's why guys like Morikawa and Zalatoris that find success at the Memorial and can find success at some of those venues like that are very live to be fine here. I just think with Zalatoris, maybe more so than any other player that we can talk about, you are not getting a price discount on him for the form that he is bringing into the mix here. Like, if I'm going to play a golfer in bad form, I'd rather play Justin Thomas if directly comparing the two.
He's not in bad form. Come
It's
Yeah,
gotten better.
I'm 100%. Yeah, and Victor Hovland for $100 more, arguably in bad form. Is he in bad form? Because iron play was fantastic last week.
He got it together on the weekend too, I believe, where the metrics got a little bit better. I think with
Ball
Hovland,
striking in general was awesome. Everything off the tee, fantastic. I'll give you round by round here. Round 1, 23rd in approach, 19th in distance, 35th in ball striking. Round 2, 27th distance, 16th ball striking. Round 3, not great. Not bad, but not great. And then Sunday, obviously shooting 2 under in those conditions was fantastic. Number 1 player, strokes gained approach. Number 1 ball striker, 25th in distance. So I'd like to think he's back, and he's a long iron goddess, isn't he? Or god, I guess. Yeah. God would be the word. Goddess.
yeah,
Pretty low, Victor.
His long iron play is great. I think the other thing with Hovland that's worth noting, the around the green stuff, as bad as it is, and it was hit and miss last week at times. It was bad, I think, at the beginning of the week and good at the end of the week, if I recall exactly how you put it together. You can correct me if that is incorrect there, Nick. But with this having a lot of rough around the green.
100% accurate there. Yeah, sucked. Almost dead last in the field the first 2 days, stroke sand around the green.
Yeah, he was popping in my model as a player that should theoretically be able to turn it around over the weekend, and we saw a lot of that with him moving up the leaderboard. It's not a finish that you would want to see with him yet. We're still yet to crack a lot of these top 10s, but I think here specifically, with there being so much rough around the green, it's going to emphasize his long iron ability. So he's going to have an advantage in that part of his game. And also when you have a lot of rough, it's going to be players that are hacking it out from there. Like, I don't think it's as big of a detriment for him when the rough gets really thick in some of these positions where you have a little bit of green there to where if you can just find the putting surface, there's a skill set there that he's already going to have an advantage for. And if you miss, you're punished. Like, everybody's going to be punished with the thicker stuff. So you can say that a name like Scotty Scheffler will be better when it comes to that, but how much so are we actually talking? Because there's a penalty to come into play. The difference with Scotty is Scotty also is going to be great with his long irons. He's going to hit a bunch of greens in regulation. So he's not the prototypical name that you'd want to use for this comparison there, but it's that sort of a build of a golfer that I think can really find success. And when Hovland drifted to 50-1, we've reached a point here where all of the downside has already been put into this number. It's the reverse of a lot of these other names that we're talking about, to where all the upside is baked into the price and you've lost all the value. I know what I'm getting with Victor Hovland. It's the same thing I've gotten every single time I've backed him this entire year. The downside is it's a losing wager, but there's a difference between 50-1 and the 14 to 18s that we were getting early in the year.
All right. I dig it. One guy I love in this price range. I don't think I'm going to fade Bryson. Think I may fade Wyndham. I need to look into that more. I like Max Homa a ton.
Yeah.
For a guy that's going to be sub 10%, I don't see anything wrong with his game. Everything out of the rough looks good. Improved distance every single year. Like, everything about him looks good. His ball striking has been on autopilot pretty much since the season started. I know everybody talks to him about majors and everything. T10 at the Open Championship, T3 at Augusta, at Augusta. So maybe that's trending in the right direction, but every long iron, everything looks good. He looks like a good golfer that should be someone that I expect to finish. What's he price? Price 10th, I think, give or take. I think he could finish inside the top 5, no problem. When a guy that I'm going to go heavy overweight on, I think as of now, Homa would be that guy. If he's sub 10%, that he goes finish top 10, I think that's no brainer. Like, Bryson over him, I don't think that's scary. Like, I kind of do want to fade Bryson with all the hype there and all the ownership in the 9K range going to that spot. I don't think I'm going to fade Bryson, but I think I'd sleep at night knowing why I did it if he does eclipse the 20% ownership range, which I think is very in play right now.
I'd like to see where that ownership lands before making a decision for all the reasons you talked about. The only other name that I'd like to bring up, I also like Homa. I think the DeChambeau thing comes down to ownership. I'm probably going to be out on Wyndham Clark.
Yep. I am as well at the moment. Dude, his iron play has not been that good. Pretty much for 6 weeks.
Yeah. What are your?
But he's still a great ball striker. So and he's going to make a lot of putts, which is certainly interesting. Everything out of the rough looks really good too. Like, I don't know.
What are your thoughts on Joaquin Niemann?
I always like Joaquin. I can't ever find anything wrong with him. Like, I thought he should have played much better at the Masters. I think Friday kind of fucked him up, right?
Yeah.
Let me pull that up. Again, that day kind of killed everybody, but...
So, Nick, just to really quickly go back to that.
He shot 6 over that day. Okay.
So, after round 1, before the wind took a bunch of those guys out of contention, my model thought, and my model's been really good at this historically, of finding some of these names that it thinks are going to make runs to potentially win the title that are a little bit deeper down the board. And it's not that Niemann was so far down. I want to say he finished day 1 under, somewhere in that range, to where he was...
Yeah, he was 2 under round 1. He was certainly live.
Certainly live, and just
everything ball striking top 10.
Yes. And my model thought he was going to be the mover that was going to potentially win. Like, that was the one value I had on the board Thursday night, and it fell apart for him on Friday. And I think the industry as a whole and people that play DFS are very fickle, specifically when it comes to these live golfers, when we're not seeing them every single week, because one bad performance, and it's not even a bad performance from Niemann, he still made the cut. It's just
finished 22nd.
Yes, it's just not what everybody wanted when he was one of the most backed golfers to win the event. And a 22nd place finish isn't going to bring you home any money there. He missed top 20 bets for a bunch of people. He missed the outright wagers. I had in tournament matchups on him that lost. Like, there was a lot of things that went wrong. It's just, I think this is a really nice bounce back and buyback spot for him, where I don't think there's going to be a ton of ownership.
He's overpriced probably in the eye of the player.
In the eye of the player here, it's a golfer that should be cheaper than he is. It's like, this is what he was at the Masters, and everybody's going to think and go, well, I did this at the Masters. He came in 22nd. It didn't win me any money. I'm not going back down there again. And this is a golfer that historically has not had major championship success. That can quickly turn around. Wyndham Clark had no major championship success and won the U.S. Open. Joaquin Niemann is a young kid that went over to live, and people forgot what an elite talent he actually was. He is every bit, if not more in my eyes, of what everybody thought Tom Kim was when he came out. Niemann at 18 years old was putting together performances on the PGA Tour. Like, this is a spot where this is a real high-end golfer with a pedigree that could win major championships. And I don't know when that actually comes to fruition here, but he has played great in some of these live events. And I don't think that the average PGA DFS player is quite aware of that. And when they were at the Masters, it didn't work out.
Yeah, which the field will have a lot of average to below average players because of $1 million contests and stuff like that. And it's a major. So I think certainly a sharp play on paper. Let's go. Cameron Young, think cool with him? Nothing crazy?
I'm fine with, I mean, I don't have like a massive take one way or another. I think he's more or less properly priced. I'd probably rather move up a couple $100 and get Niemann, but like, I don't see a massive difference between him and a lot of those names. He's fine. To me, the fades in this range would more so be, I don't think there's going to be ownership around Cam Smith, but I'm out on Cam Smith. I'd like to see where Bryson is, and I'm going to be out on Wyndham Clark. Like, that's probably the names there where I'm just not on.
Cool with JT then. I mean, Louisville.
Yeah, I'm fine with him. I thought last week was the week that he was going to put it back together, and now my model kind of thinks it's this week, because last week my model didn't necessarily like him. I want to say it graded him 40-somethingth, and he came 21st, and now this week it's grading him 15th. So we finally, after all this time of Justin Thomas not popping in my model, we're seeing encouraging signs from him.
All right. Fitz, I don't know, not a sexy name. Tommy Fleetwood, 15% ownership is what I have now. I think that'll probably stay just because always like a walking top 15 in majors, what it seems like. I don't love him. He didn't grade that well for me.
What did he grade? I'll let you answer.
I don't have odds yet, but I have my points and everything. He's like 30th. So about who Tommy Fleetwood is. Safe guy, but 15% or more is going to play him, I feel like I'd rather roll the dice on Jordan Spieth.
Fleetwood for me is one of those players that we talk about quite frequently where they are quote unquote, and this isn't even quote unquote, this is what Tommy Fleetwood is, but quote unquote safer plays than they are upside targets. And that from a statistical perspective, that's exactly what my model put together with it. He's inside the top 20 overall. He's outside the top 35 for upside. He's inside the top 20 for safety. That's the Tommy Fleetwood profile. And the thing is, at a certain point, I don't know if it's at 8,700 or not, but there is a certain point where there is a value there. That was the Tony Finau recipe for so long to where, and Hideki Matsuyama, where they would make those names 7,900 and those were the values of these major championships. I would argue that Fleetwood's a little bit too expensive where he's at right now. You're going to have to sell me on Jordan Spieth here, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like Jordan Spieth. I don't know. Fanboy play? I could say that, right? There's no rules. Right?
Do you
I
think...
could just say fanboy play? I mean, his irons just completely disappeared. Like, dude, he's irons away. Just find that form. Like, round one, he was awesome. What happened? How does he just lose it?
I
worry
like
in terms of up and down, out of the rough, like everything. Distance that he's gained, I don't know. Maybe he is broken. Is he broken?
I don't know if he's broken necessarily, but he's erratic off the tee, and he is a name that's coming here for... This is the very quiet version of what happens with Rory at Augusta of trying to capture the career Grand Slam. Maybe that he's so out of sight, out of mind with his game right now that he feels no pressure to win this tournament. But there's still the career Grand Slam on the line for him. And that usually historically has not gone well for a lot of these new school players that have tried to get the job done.
5% in the 8K range, man. I don't know. Seems like again, I'm playing the player pool as like, all right, how do I get an edge in the Millie Maker? He kind of checks that box for an uncomfortable play that I could sleep at night knowing I went, if he's 5%, if I go 10 to 15, I'm not saying go 5x the field on him, but I don't know. His everything out, like, I don't think he's going to miss the cut.
Let me give you an intriguing answer here, which would go to your sentiment that you're trying to push right now. And as we always say,
It's my heart.
No, but this is not the be all end all of what we're looking for here. But for some of these close decisions, we always talk about movement in the market and trying to figure out where things are moving in these directions. And he's priced against some interesting players. He's pretty much a pick 'em against Matthew Fitzpatrick, which I'm indifferent either way on Fitzpatrick. Like, I think that's a fine person to be even against.
Yeah.
He is a heavy favorite against Hideki. I don't know if that's more
withdrawal stuff.
That's probably what that is. And that could be public money. Like, that scares me a little bit that, although I don't know I guess Spieth would be the public darling versus a golfer that just withdrew from a tournament. So I wouldn't promise if that's sharp or square. I mean, I guess I could look on Pinnacle and Bookmaker to see where his outright number is trending, because that's probably a very big indicator of where the sharp money's actually moving on him.
This guy lights up Muirfield Village every single time, no matter what type of form he's in, which kind of gets me interested for this. Just like scramble yourself to even par each day, make a little run on Saturday, finish inside the top 10 at 5% ownership at that price. I could do it.
It seems like there's
more sex appeal with him, in my opinion, than Tommy Fleetwood. There is also tons of burn money away by making that decision too. Hideki, I think I'm out. Are you out on Hideki while we're on that topic?
I think I'm out on Hideki.
Okay. And it's like Sam Burns, Shane Lowry, I don't mind. If no one's going to play, he actually graded out pretty well for me. I don't know why. And he who shall not be named, I'm sure I'll get sucked back into him at 8,300. We're not going to say his name. Any thoughts on Hatton, Thigala? I think we're both riding DJ, right? Patrick Reed, I'm a hard pass.
Dustin's my favorite play in this section.
Outside of Patty, anything with him?
I didn't hate him. I don't love him, but he had enough.
I hate him too. I hate him. I think he's shit.
Well, I don't.
Just
as a person, we could have a different conversation of what he is.
I've never met him as a person. I've heard we all heard he's an asshole. So I'm not going to say he is because I don't actually know him. I don't want to judge that way, even though I judge Bryson sex life for some reason. But that's just something I got to work out internally. I don't anything with distance. Just I think he's I don't know.
Reed has a really safe profile at PGA Championships.
Yes, he does. I see that.
And he graded inside the top 20 of my model for safety. The upside numbers left a ton to be desired. But what did you say the ownership was on him?
Well, how about Sanjay last week too? I told you on that one. Ownership for Patrick?
Yes.
Like 6? I'd say less than for sure.
See, that's why I think he at least has like consideration for playability, because all of a sudden at 6% ownership, if he gives you
he's going to finish at like 3 to 4%. There's no way he's higher than 5.
I would agree with that. And if all of a sudden he gives you that 13th place finish, I think he's a cheap enough option to where at $8,000 you can fit him into a build. So I'm not
iron play there. Like that's why I worry about him. I can't get data on him, so it's like I don't know. I just remember historically too, he wasn't really a good iron player. Just great at everything else.
At the Masters, for whatever this is worth, he every single day was the biggest fade candidate I had on the board, and I got burnt every single day by that. And he just kept producing. So I don't know what that means for this week as we move here to a course where some of the longer iron play could potentially be a problem. He's 87th in my model from the numbers that I ran from the extra emphasis that I added to the long iron play, but I think he's okay to consider. It's just there's definitely a cap ceiling there.
Thoughts on Theegala? Everybody's darling from last week, mine included.
One
AirPod did die for those counting at home. The left ear's gone.
What ownership do you see on him?
10.
You could sell me on him. I think he's intriguing for a handful of reasons.
Lights out iron play, fantastic out of the rough from unexpected, and I think that's the case though because I have him missing a lot of fairways. So for the iron player that he is, he should probably be a top guy on proximity out of the rough for having so many cracks at it.
His good shot percentage was like very staggering in a good way for him inside of my model. It had concerns with the overall iron play out of the rough, which I guess is a little bit different from how I ran it, and that's what hurt him in the model a little bit. But the good shot percentage out of the rough was great.
Tyrrell Hatton.
My model.
I look at Theegala as like 8,100. He could definitely top 10. Ownership's not crazy. Like I've kicked myself so many times for just taking out like these middle range guys that like I just don't really feel them. And it's like they are certainly the pedigree of player that could finish top 10 and they don't have ownership. Like simplify the game for myself. Like I should have some exposure to him in the MME format.
The 3 players in the $8,000 section that have a value inside of my model compared to their DraftKings price would be Hatton, Theegala, and Dustin Johnson.
Nice. So as long as it's not fucking Tony. All right, 7K range. Anybody you don't? Jason Day is starting to come around. How do your pants feel about that one?
Well, I mean, you want to talk about pants and Jason Day. He has had some wild ensembles that he's worn. Like he looks like
true.
He looks like
they're starting to tame it down though.
I don't know. He looks like the last one. He looked like he was straight out of the 1880s or 1920s with the outfit, but he's borderline like MC Hammer with those pants.
It's not good. I don't get it. I feel like too, like didn't they make more slim fit pants because players said they didn't want to feel the wind just whipping at their legs all day, like, and it helped them swing. I don't like. We're going.
I like outside the box thinkers. I don't know how much money they're paying him, and if it's just a money thing to where, or how much say he has in the outfits that he's putting together. But somebody that is different and doesn't think the conventional norm and wears the same outfits as everybody else, I like it with Jason Day. Like I may not love the outfits that he's wearing, and you're not going to see me caught in them unless Malbon wants to pay me, which I have reached out numerous times.
We'll take a sponsor. Yeah, we're not above selling out.
No, not at all. I mean, if like I've tried to have them, they don't contact me, and that's probably where the hate of the clothing comes in more than anything. But um, I think Day is fine to consider. I assume Ben On is going to be very popular. My model really liked him though.
Ben, I was going to say that's a fade candidate for me. I've been playing him all the time, but he's actually starting to hit fairways too. That could be a problem. He's so putter heavy though, dude. When he's not putting well, he does not scare me.
My model like really liked him.
I mean, he's a lights out long iron player. I think out of the rough leaves a little bit to be desired, maybe.
But I think he should have been hundreds of dollars more expensive than this, and that's unfortunately where the ownership is going to come into play. But look, I mean, it's a major championship. We can try and fade chalk in a lot of these directions, but a lot of these majors, chalk still comes in here and there. Like, I'm more inclined to be okay to do it with Ben On than most of the other names that we've discussed so far with it.
What do we think about Brian Harman and Sepp Straka? No one know.
I am out on Harman. There was an upside in my model that it kind of liked if the ownership's low enough, but
for Brian,
I had no floor for him. Straka seems to be a blind spot of my model.
He's playing good golf.
Yeah.
Really good golf. Holy shit. Man, he may be one of the best iron players on tour over the last month if you run a sample size that small. I don't know if that's appropriate, but
I do think for a major championship, if you're peaking in those areas of your game, it is an important quality. I have nothing to say. The long-term metrics inside my model do not like him. The short-term stuff will boost him up anybody's sheet with it. I don't really have a take one way or another because I've been extremely strong on some of the fades recently, and I have been wrong and incorrect. Like at some point, I have to realize that there is a problem with the way that the model is viewing him and not get caught into the same trap over and over again.
For sure. Okay. Some guys that I do like in this range, just because we don't need to talk about everybody. I don't have thoughts on Taylor Gooch. I don't know if I'll play him. Corey Connors, I think, is fine. I think you're always 7,600. He's like the Fleetwood to me.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd rather just pay 7,600 for Corey Connors and assume that I get a very similar outcome than what I get with 8,700 Fleetwood. Nico Højgaard. Seeing 1% right now due to back-to-back missed cuts, one of them being New Orleans. I feel like we talked about him at the Masters. Was a fantastic play there. Kind of like him again.
It's the same answer as the Masters is you know what you're signing up for with a player that is extremely volatile right now, but he has the distance and the long iron play that you would want to see. So he was one of the biggest climbers inside of my sheet for pure upside. For one of those 1% dart throw sort of names at 7,400, that is the GPP millionaire maker, real difference-making type of an option there.
Yeah, one of these guys is going to finish like inside the top 15, maybe even make a run a little bit on Sunday in this low 7K range. It happens all the time. Any thoughts on Russ Henley? Do you like this course for him? I know, like, to me, his iron play, and not to me statistically, his iron play has not been as good, but it's starting to get back there. Obviously, the T10 at Wells Fargo, everybody says you have to be long there. His long irons are just fantastic. His game out of the rough's pretty damn good, too. I feel like Russ is a guy that I could certainly live with here.
What ownership do you see? I don't think of Russ as a PGA Championship player. So I assume 3%. The ownership will... What would you say, Nick?
3. On Monday, again, for anybody tuning in late, like, do not quote us on these ownerships later. But, like, they're way subject to change. But I don't think he'll get a lot of love with Adam Scott being the same price.
I think that's a fair answer there. I mean, at 3%, sure.
Keegan Bradley.
My model liked Bradley, but that was one of the names for me. Like the best values removing ownership from the mix were Ben On, Corey Connors, Keegan Bradley.
Adam Schenk.
I am going to say pass on Schenk.
Ooh, okay.
69th overall in my model, and that's for a player that my model has really been liking recently.
Yes, it has. That's what that one shocked me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just there wasn't necessarily a specific metric in my sheet that showed much more than a cup maker.
Okay.
And I don't know if
with volatility probably too, right?
A cup maker with volatility, and
Yeah.
that's the problem of the profile, because technically, at least according to my sheet, he has better upside in it, but the floor has some question marks to it. And the statistical data, though, is a bunch of 50ths in this field out of 156 players, where I don't necessarily see that like immense upside that I would be looking for of a player that has a skill set that can pop.
Okay. 6,900 and below. Give me a couple guys you might have likes. We'll get out of here. Maybe do a couple fives. I will let you know points wise. Gary Woodland, again, I know I mentioned him a little bit last week. I don't think the guy's ever going to make a putt, but I do believe in him a little bit. But his short game has to grade awful for you. Or with the more heavy rough, does it grade better in the bunkers?
So his short game graded.
He's one of the best players out of the rough. With I remember, he's got like that kind of very steep angle of attack, which should help out of the rough.
Third in my model for rough proximity. That goes to your point there. He's also very good out of the fairway bunkers. I think
Woody's got some life.
I think he is another name. We've talked about a lot of these recently. This is relatively speaking of the names that we're talking about, but very high ceiling compared to a lot of these options that we're looking at. Extremely low floor at the right ownership percentage. I don't have a problem with him.
You do think it's a low floor? I feel like with
I think it.
What do you expect to win? 10 under, 12.
I think it's going to get a little bit easier scoring than. I think this is going to be 14 under par.
Okay, so that's where if it's like I was kind of telling myself the story, it would be around 10 in Woodland, shooting close to even. Maybe has one or two spike putting rounds, which would, with his ball striking, could certainly change the tournament for him. I feel like he could be a sneaky guy that finishes inside the top 20 at 0% ownership. That just fills out your lineup at 6K flat.
Great player on hard scoring courses. Great player on hard courses. Is excelled at PGA Championships. For inside of my model.
The Zoysia stuff is good too. I don't know where that tab is, but does he light it up at Muirfield? I know that's not Zoysia, but similar type of setup.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could bring it up and check, but
22 cut, 21 cut, T22 in 2020. If you want to talk about that, it could be T50. No, not anything crazy. No.
I'm fine with Woodland though. You know what you're signing up for at no ownership, and that's fine. Unfortunately, and this is where we have to find the Woodlands of the world. A lot of the players that my model liked a lot are going to be, and as I said, I don't have the ownership up in front of me right now, but I can tell you Keith Mitchell is going to be popular. Taylor Pendrith is going to be popular. I assume Tom Hoagie is going to be popular. My model liked all three of those names. It'll come down to ownership.
English.
My model never likes Harris English. Fair value, essentially, at where we're at, which he never moves the needle for me for whatever reason. Like I would
starting to pump the ball though. If I wait driving over the last 6 months in comparison to doing a year or 24 months, his driver pumps up for me.
I just would rather play Chris Kirk. I don't know what the ownership difference is, but
Kirk's not going to have much, and that's kind of where I look at like Shank. It's like, okay, Shank's a potential cup maker with downside. Chris Kirk's probably just a cup maker who with a little bit of upside, probably, if anything.
Yeah, that's the problem that we talk about every single week on this show. He has flashed at PGA Championships though.
I do like Kitayama again. I think I can go back there. What about Poston?
It's a very similar, completely different way of how he gets it done, because you don't necessarily think of Poston at these long courses, but a very similar profile inside of my model, at least from the upside versus safety answer that I got for Gary Woodland.
I feel like I'd rather take Woodland then for way cheaper.
I would agree with that.
Anybody else? fancier interests here. Thomas Dietrich. Obviously, Keith Mitchell's going to be popular. We don't need to talk about him. Moronk. I don't know if I can go back after the disaster he gave me at Augusta.
I think Dietrich's...
Jake Knapp? I think no. I still don't think I trust the short game enough on these hard scoring courses.
I think I'd rather play Dietrich. I kind of like Dietrich a bit.
Okay, I just worry about his iron play.
Yeah. There's going to be red flag marks across the board.
Anywhere in this, in this price range. Taylor Pendrith is pushing 10%. Yeah, I think I'm going to fade that and go to Woodland. Lucas Herbert. I feel like you always just take some sort of action on that guy.
Yeah.
Mr. No Irons as well.
Is there anybody in the $5,000 section that you even want to talk about?
I mean, I will look at Nakajima. I think Kanaya. Remember my guy Kanaya? I think he qualified. Yeah, he's here. Austin Eckroat. No,
I'm afraid
Kanaya's too short off the tee.
Too short, yeah.
Same with Eckroat.
That's the answer I was giving for Eckroat there.
So, Emiliano Grillo checks a lot of boxes for me, and I can't figure out why. And that's what we talked about right the 1 second before air.
I guess for me, like the three.
There's got to be someone. Like I always like Jordan Smith, but I don't like him in America. I don't think. Toasty, like dude,
did you see the ultimate? Did you see the ultimate disrespect that Toasty's one matchup that was out in the space was against Michael Block?
That's an easy hammer bet. There's a hammer bet, Ed. Minus 225. I mean,
I know this sounds wild to say. Like he's going to win. I don't even think it's a lock.
Really?
I think Toasty has the potential to come in last place.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean he doesn't have upside to his game. But
not at 225.
Yeah, like I don't want to lay 225 for a golfer that has absolutely no built-in safety in my model whatsoever. It's just more of a him versus Michael Block portion of the answer there. Although, I mean, I want nothing to do with Michael Block, obviously.
Is there anybody that graded well for you in the fives?
There were three.
Adam Svensson?
No, surprisingly not. One was Alex Smalley.
I liked his price. Let me look at him real quick. Let me pull up his profile. Decent form. I know he's not really playing events that we would tip our cap and say, yeah, you're beating good players, but
so he would be one. Two would be, and I mean, I guess this was even if you're trying to find a matchup and you want to throw a fifth one out there that I was considering. Luke List graded well for me. There was a matchup against Nick Dunlap.
I like Luke List. I
decided not to go to that matchup as of right now. But
I like that one, definitely.
It was very, very close in my sheet. Matt Wallace graded pretty well for me at 5,700.
I loved Wallace at what event was that he should have won? I shouldn't have won, but that was the Byron. Yeah, Byron Nelson. Dude, I worry that he just is completely inept at hitting a fairway, that he is going to get in a lot of trouble missing it by a ton. Numbers out of the rough look good for me. Recent data for mid to long irons looks good for me. Even long-term data looks decent. I like him when he's in good form, and he is playing good golf right now.
116th in my model in projected total driving. So that goes to the answer that you're talking about of there being concerns.
I'm just very scared about that.
Outside of that, it is a lot of...
That's why he's a guy I like at Augusta. And he was a big part of that massive lineup I had back in 2021 or whenever DJ won. He was like the filling piece that scored enough on Sunday to get me across the finish line. But yeah, the 5K range is pretty gross again, which is kind of where I plan on my flag. I'm just not going to play Scotty again.
Do you have anybody, like if you bring this up, I don't know if you have them ranked out in your sheet right now. Do you have anybody that's inside of the top 50 of your model from this part of the section?
Thorbjorn Olesen always grades really well for me, and I get burned on that every time. So I'm not going to give him as an answer. Luke List was close, 62. Griot was inside the top 50, but again, I can't figure that one out.
Yeah, for me, it would be Smalley, List, Wallace. SH Kim was very close. If I ran this for upside, Olesen would be right there. And there's Olesen. Like, here's the thing about Olesen. I don't know where the ownership's going to land. The overall profile has, like, if you look at my model, it runs from this color coding of dark blue to bright red. He is either dark blue or bright red in like every single category that I'm looking at this week. But I think that's a good answer for a $5,500 golfer.
Oh, I do have one other. Okay. One other. And these grades top 40 for me in upside. EVR.
My model looked at him also a little bit. Number EVR. One for me in fairway bunker GIR percentage.
Dude, and he is ball striking has been fantastic.
Yeah.
T4 last week at Myrtle Beach. That was actually a pretty decent field. I really wish Davis Thompson would have won that, but got her up. Crushed.
Do you have thoughts on Goddard?
64, 65, 67 to close out. Good God.
Do you have thoughts on Goddard up?
No, I'm going to be out on Goddard up.
That's probably fair. My model kind of sort of liked him, but I probably would rather play EVR.
No, I know he spiked approach, but that is such a mixed bag based on what we see from him. And it was a club down course for him, so I want to see it when he actually has to light up driver and miss fairways like Matt Wallace misses fairways.
It's interesting, some of these guys that are your prototypical long drivers of the ball that do better at these club down courses. It's almost any of those Davis Thompsons. Cameron Young has the same thing that he puts together. Cam Davis.
Ludwig, I think you were on pretty quickly about that, even though I think long course is still like he's just a superstar.
Yeah, he's different because he is a superstar compared to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got. We went an hour and 15. Right AirPod's still alive. I don't know what's going on with this left one. Like Apple needs, if you're listening, Apple, Tim Cook, trying to make your lineups, figure this out, man. They should die at the same time, right?
I mean, if they're properly charged, I have an
iPhone. They're properly charged. Here, it's sitting on the cord. Maybe I overcharge them, potentially. They just sit there charging all the time, and then I open them up on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, whenever we do the shows, and that's it. They just sit there the rest of the time. Because I have an Android phone, so I only use these to hook up to my laptop.
Apple products for me, and maybe this is just my inability to make change in life. I still have the iPhone 8, and
if it works, it works, man. I'm all about it. You don't need a new phone. If you
that's the problem, Nick. I will unplug my phone. I'll charge it the entire night. I will unplug it. I will wake up. I will scroll through Twitter for 5 minutes in the morning, and I'll have 27% battery left.
Okay, you need a new phone. I take back what I said. If it works, like that's not working properly. That's time. But they also had self-admitted that they make batteries to slowly self-destruct to get you to buy a new phone, which shady America. But what are we gonna do?
I'm fighting the man trying not to get a new phone at this point.
But no, man, you need a new phone. There's no doubt about that. Victor Perez, last guy, graded okay.
Yes, he was 62nd for me. He would be that next range of players that were borderline top 50.
Okay, he ropes the ball. Decent in majors, kind of mixed bag, but at this price, everybody is. All right, appreciate it. Where else is your work this week? You doing any obviously not the 7 deadly sins of Augusta, but any major breakdown like that this week?
No, I'm not going to have anything special. I don't think you have as many trendy sort of outcomes as you get at the Masters, with that being at Augusta every single year. We will be on tomorrow with Roberto over on Links and Locks. I will be doing Green Dot Daily at Action Network. PGA Draftcast. I think we have an earlier time. Jump in to Win Daily there. You can figure out what time. I think it's 4:00 Pacific time instead of the 6:00 time that we normally air that show. And then all my written work, for the most part, and model will be over at Rotoballer.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you all for your comments, concerns, anything else. Hopping in, giving us the support. We greatly appreciate that. Check out Underdog. Actually, a ton of good drafts this week. So if I'm going on a golf trip starting tomorrow night. So hopefully I can get my MME pool down by then. Before this, I become a hot mess on the golf course with a lot of friends and everything like that. But I don't know where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? I don't know.
Underdog.
Yes, Underdog. So, yeah, I will hopefully try to post a draft maybe Wednesday night or something like that while I'm sitting around a campfire or whatever we're doing that night before tee off on Thursday morning. But thank you guys so much, and good luck to everybody this week.
Yep. Code BGP.
Good call.